I really believed I was her only one. I gave her everything, my pension, my trust, my future. We laughed every night, made plans every morning. Then I found out I was husband number 5, and the worst part? I still don't know if she ever loved me at all. The coffee was brewing when she walked into our tiny kitchen that Sunday morning, still in her pink pajamas with the little cats on them. "Good morning, my love," Emilyn said, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind. I felt her cheek press against my back, warm and soft. "Did you sleep well?" I turned around and kissed her forehead. She smelled like the vanilla shampoo she always used. "Better than I have in years," I told her, and I meant it. This small apartment in Makati had become my sanctuary. After 30 years of teaching high school kids in Texas, after the divorce, after my son stopped returning my calls, I never thought I'd feel this settled again. "What should we do today?" she asked, already folding our laundry on the counter. Her hands moved so gracefully, creasing each shirt with care. "Maybe walk around the mall? Or just stay here and be lazy?" I watched her fold one of my button-downs. The blue one she said made my eyes look younger. "Staying here sounds perfect," I said. She smiled that smile that made me forget I was 62. "You know what I love about us, Gerald?" she said, looking up from the clothes. "We don't need anything fancy. Just this. Just us." I poured her coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, exactly how she liked it. "I love our life," she whispered, standing on her toes to kiss my cheek. In that moment, I believed we'd have Sunday mornings like this forever. The loneliness that had followed me from Texas felt like a distant memory. I thought I'd finally found my person. We met on Hello Talk, a language exchange app I'd downloaded out of boredom during my first week in Manila. I was looking for someone to help me learn basic Tagalog, maybe make a friend. Her profile picture was simple, no filters, no glamour shots, just her sitting in what looked like a coffee shop, wearing a plain white t-shirt. "Hello, I'm Emilyn. I would love to practice English with you," her first message read. Her grammar was perfect. That surprised me. "I'm Gerald. I just moved here from Texas. Your English is already excellent." I wrote back, "Thank you. I studied literature in college but never had American friends." "Are you retired?" she asked. We talked for hours that first day. She told me she tutored students online, that she lived alone, that her family was from Bataan but she moved to Manila for work. "It gets lonely sometimes," she wrote. "But I like quiet life. No drama, no complications." Something about her honesty drew me in. After weeks of chatting, I mentioned I was thinking of staying in the Philippines permanently. "Really? Maybe we could meet for coffee when you decide," she suggested. The day I told her I'd booked my retirement visa appointment, she sent a voice message. Her accent was gentle, musical. "I'm excited to meet you, Gerald. I think we could be good friends." Friends. That's how it started. When I walked out of Ninoy Aquino Airport 3 months later, jet-lagged and nervous, she was there holding a small sign with my name. She looked exactly like her photos, no surprise, no disappointment. "Welcome to your new home," she said, and hugged me like we'd known each other for years. That first month we took things slow. Coffee dates, walks around Rizal Park, long conversations about books and movies. She never asked about my finances, never pushed for anything physical. "I want to know your heart first," she told me one evening as we sat by Manila Bay. "In my culture, we build trust slowly." I appreciated that. My ex-wife had always made everything feel rushed, transactional. With Emilyn, everything felt natural. When I finally kissed her 6 weeks later, she whispered, "I was hoping you would do that." We moved in together 2 months after that. The first time I noticed something was off, we'd been living together for 3 months. I was washing dishes when her phone buzzed on the counter. The message preview lit up the screen before she could grab it. "When are you coming home?" it read. From someone named Marco. "Who's Marco?" I asked casually, handing her the phone. Her face flickered for just a second. "Oh, that's my sister's boyfriend. He's confused." He meant to text her. She quickly deleted the message. My sister sometimes uses my phone when hers is dead. It seemed reasonable, but something in her voice felt rehearsed. That weekend, she told me she needed to visit her sister in Quezon City. She's having problems with her landlord. I might stay overnight to help her move some things. I offered to come with her, help carry boxes. No, no, she said quickly. It's better if it's just family. You understand. I didn't understand, but I didn't want to seem controlling. She left Saturday morning with a small bag and didn't come back until Monday evening. How did it go? I asked. Fine, fine. Everything is okay now. But she seemed distant that night, distracted. The next month, I noticed money missing from our joint account. Not a huge amount, but enough. Emilyn, did you need to withdraw cash for something? I showed her the bank statement. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I should have asked. My sister couldn't make her rent this month. I helped her. She touched my arm gently. I'll pay it back next week when I get paid from my students. She never paid it back. When I mentioned it a month later, she looked genuinely confused. What money? Oh, that old thing? I thought we already talked about that. These little moments started adding up. Phone calls she'd taken in the bathroom. Weekend trips to help family members I never met. Money that disappeared for emergencies that were never explained in detail. But every time I started to feel suspicious, she'd do something that reminded me why I loved her. She'd surprise me with my favorite adobo, or curl up against me while we watched Netflix and whisper, "I'm so lucky to have you." I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, we came from different worlds. Maybe this was just how families worked here. Maybe I was expecting too much too soon. I found the photograph on a Tuesday afternoon while looking for batteries in our shared dresser drawer. It was tucked between some old receipts and a notebook she used for lesson planning. The image stopped my heart. Emilyn in a white wedding dress, radiant and beautiful, standing next to a man I'd never seen. He was tall, dark-haired, maybe in his 30s. They were cutting a cake together, both wearing rings. The photo looked recent, professional, real. My hands shook as I held it. This wasn't some old picture from years ago. The dress style was modern, her hair was the same length as when I met her. I sat on our bed, staring at the image, trying to make sense of it. When she came home from tutoring that evening, I was waiting at the kitchen table with the photo in front of me. "Emilyn, who is this man?" I asked quietly. She looked at the picture, and for a moment, her whole face changed. The warmth disappeared. Then she laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Oh my God, Gerald, where did you find that? That's so embarrassing." She sat down across from me, reaching for the photo. "That was at my cousin's wedding last year. They made everyone take pictures like that as a joke. You know, like pretending to be the bride and groom. Filipino weddings are very silly sometimes." She was looking directly at me, her expression earnest. "The photographer said we looked cute together, so he printed it for fun. I kept it because I thought it was funny. I wanted to believe her. The explanation made some sense. Filipino weddings were elaborate, from what I'd heard. But something about the way she'd said embarrassing bothered me. As if she was embarrassed about being caught, not about having a silly photo. "Who's the man?" I asked. "Just my cousin's friend. I don't even remember his name. Mario? Miguel? Something like that." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Gerald, you're not jealous of a fake wedding photo, are you? That would be silly." She kissed my forehead and took the picture. "I'll throw this away. I don't need it." But she didn't throw it away. I checked the trash later that night. The photo was gone, but not in any garbage can I could find. 3 weeks before our planned trip to Cebu, I couldn't find my passport anywhere. I'd seen it just days before, in the small safe we kept in our bedroom closet. "Have you seen my passport?" I asked Emilyn over breakfast. She was scrolling through her phone, responding to student messages. No, why would I see your passport?" She didn't look up. "It's not in the safe. We need it for the Cebu flight next week." Now, she looked at me, eyebrows raised. "Are you sure you put it there? Maybe you moved it somewhere and forgot." I spent the entire morning tearing apart our apartment. Under the bed, in coat pockets, between books, inside kitchen drawers, nothing. "Gerald, you're being crazy," Emilyn said, watching me search. "Papers don't just disappear. You must have put it somewhere." That afternoon, our neighbor Mrs. Santos was hanging laundry on the shared balcony when I stepped outside for air. She was a sweet older woman who'd lived in the building for 20 years. "Gerald, you look stressed," she said in her careful English. "Is everything okay?" I told her about the passport. Her expression grew serious. "Ah," she said quietly, glancing toward our door. "Has she done this before?" I asked. Mrs. Santos looked uncomfortable. "I don't like to talk about other people's business." "Please," I said. "I'm worried." She sighed. "There was a man before you, Australian, I think. Very nice man. He lived here with her for maybe 8 months. One day, he was looking everywhere for his passport too. Very upset, fighting with her in English." She shook her head. "Next week, he was gone. Never saw him again." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, gone?" "Moved out. In a hurry." He looked. She searched for the word. "Scared? Angry? I don't know. But after that, she stayed alone for a few months. Then you came." I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. "Mrs. Santos, do you think she took his passport?" The old woman looked at me with kind, sad eyes. "I don't know, Gerald. But I think maybe you should be careful." That night, I couldn't sleep. Emilyn was beside me, breathing softly, facing away from me like she'd been doing for weeks. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the Australian man, thinking about my missing passport, thinking about how trapped I suddenly felt. The Facebook message came on a Thursday morning while Emilyn was out getting groceries. "Hello. Do you live with Emilyn Santos?" The sender's name was David Chen, and his profile showed he was from Vancouver. My heart started racing. "Who's asking?" I replied. "I was married to her. I might still be. Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "What do you mean, married to her?" Within minutes, my phone was ringing. David's voice was steady but tired. "Look, I don't want to ruin your life, but someone ruined mine, and I wish I'd had warning. How long have you been with her?" 8 months, I said. "We live together." "Jesus. Okay, listen. I married her in 2019. Ceremony in Bataan, her hometown. Beautiful wedding. Cost me 15,000 Canadian dollars. Lived with her for a year and a half." My throat felt dry. "What happened?" "I found out I was number 3. Maybe number 4. There were others. Always others. She collects men like trophies or something. Good men. Western men with money." I sat down hard on our couch. "That's impossible." "She told me she'd only had 2 serious relationships." David laughed bitterly. "She told me the same thing. Look, I'm going to give you 2 more numbers. Call them." The first number was James, from Australia. The second was Henrik, from Denmark. I called James first. "Oh God," he said, when I explained who I was. "Not another one." James had lived with Emilyn for 10 months in 2020. "She took everything, mate. My savings, my passport, my dignity. When I finally confronted her, she just disappeared. Left me with a lease I couldn't break and bills I couldn't pay." Henrik's story was similar, but worse. "She married me too. Traditional ceremony, her family, everything. I sent money to her sick mother for months. 20,000 euros, easy. Then I found out her mother died 10 years ago. I felt sick. How many of us are there? That we know of? 5, counting you. But probably more. When Emilyn came home with bags of groceries, I was still sitting on the couch, phone in my hand. "Gerald, you look terrible. Are you feeling sick?" She came over and felt my forehead. Her touch made my skin crawl. "Emilyn," I said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Her whole body went tense. "What? How many men have you been married to?" The grocery bags slipped from her hands. Eggs cracked on our tile floor. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she started to cry. "Gerald, I can explain everything." "How many?" "It's not what you think," she said. "Those men, they didn't treat me well. They made promises they didn't keep. They used me and left me with nothing. You're different. What we have is real." "How many, Emilyn?" She wiped her eyes. 3, maybe 4. But those weren't real marriages. Not like us. I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. "Not like us? Emilyn, we're not even married. But we could be," she said quickly. "We could make it official. We could stop." I stood up. "Just stop." The woman I'd loved for 8 months was still standing there, still beautiful, still speaking in that gentle accent I'd fallen in love with. But now she looked like a stranger. I didn't yell at her. I didn't throw things or slam doors. I just sat her down at our kitchen table the next morning and said, "I know about the others. All of them." She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just looked at me with those dark eyes I'd thought were so honest and said, "You knew what this was, Gerald." "What does that mean?" I asked. "I never lied to you," she said. "I told you I wanted a quiet life with a good man. That's what I gave you. 8 months of quiet life. You were married to other people. They're gone now. You're here now. That's how life works." Her voice was so calm, so matter of fact, like we were discussing the weather. "Do you love me?" I asked. "Does it matter?" she said. "We had good times. We were happy. That's more than most people get." I felt something break inside me, something I didn't know could break twice. "Pack your things," I said quietly. "I want you gone by tonight." She nodded. "Okay." No fighting, no begging, no tears. She went to our bedroom and started folding her clothes into the same small suitcase she'd brought when she moved in. I sat at the kitchen table and watched her erase herself from our apartment. 8 months of shared life disappeared in 2 hours. Photos came down from the refrigerator. Her shampoo vanished from the bathroom. The coffee mug she used every morning went into her bag. Before she left, she stood in our doorway with her suitcase. "Gerald," she said, "you're a good man. I hope you find what you're looking for." I expected her to say she'd come back. I expected her to call later that night, crying, asking for another chance. I expected something, but she just left. 3 weeks later, the landlord knocked on my door. "Mr. Gerald, there's some confusion about the lease." "What confusion?" "The apartment is rented under Emilyn Santos. You're not on the paperwork. She called and said she won't be renewing. My name wasn't on anything. Not the lease, not the utilities, not the internet. For 8 months, I'd been living in her apartment, paying her bills, funding her life. I was never her partner. I was just another tenant. I wrote her a letter every day for 2 weeks. Never sent any of them. Dear Emilyn, I'm not angry anymore. I just want to understand why. Delete. Dear Emilyn, did you ever love me, even a little? Delete. Dear Emilyn, what was real? Anything? Delete. I went back through our old messages, our photos, looking for clues I'd missed. But that was the thing about Emilyn, she never actually lied. She just let me believe. When I asked about her past relationships, she said, "I've been hurt before." True. When I asked if she lived alone before me, she said, "I like having someone to share my space with." True. When I asked if she wanted to build a future together, she said, "I want to be happy." True. She was a master of the non-answer, the gentle redirect, the emotional sleight of hand. I'd fallen in love with my own assumptions. I found myself walking the same streets we used to walk together, eating at the same restaurants, sitting in the same coffee shops. Manila felt like a ghost town of our memories. But slowly, I realized something. In all those places, I'd been so focused on her, so grateful that someone wanted to be with me, that I'd never really looked around. I'd never seen the city itself. I started walking different routes, tried food she'd never liked, talked to people who didn't know our story. I downloaded a language app not to meet women but to actually learn Tagalog this time. I joined a volunteer group at a local elementary school, helping kids with English reading. Slowly, very slowly, I remembered what it felt like to be myself instead of being half of us. The loneliness was still there, but it felt different now, less desperate, more honest. I deleted her number from my phone. I threw away the photos. I kept only one thing, a small notebook where I wrote down everything I'd learned. Not about her, but about myself. About the warning signs I'd ignored. About the difference between love and need. About how loneliness can make you accept crumbs and call it a feast. I'm still in Manila. Not because I'm waiting for her to come back, and not because I'm afraid to leave. I'm here because this is where I finally learned how to be alone without being lonely. I moved into a small condo near Rizal Park, sharing space with 2 other retirees, Bob from Michigan and Carlos, a Filipino widower. We cook together sometimes, watch basketball games, complain about the traffic, It's simple and real and honest. I teach English at the same elementary school where I volunteer. The kids call me Teacher Gerald and draw me pictures of stick figures with gray hair. I make enough to live on, and I don't need much anymore. Sometimes I see couples walking hand in hand through the malls, and I remember what it felt like to believe in forever. But I don't miss it the way I thought I would. What I miss is the version of myself who could trust so completely. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing to lose. Last month I got a message from a woman on a dating app. "Hello, I would love to practice English with you." I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted the app. I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. But for the first time in my life, that feels okay. I thought I came to Manila to start a life with her. Turns out, I came here to learn how to live without her. And you know what? I'm doing just fine.